Professor William Jacobson, founder of the website Legal Insurrection, professor at Cornell University Law School. Professor Jacobson, what is Donald Trump guilty of?
That's a big question, and that's really what we don't know, and that's why I can't imagine this is going to hold up on appeal. Technically, he was convicted of 34 counts of falsifying books and records for the purpose of committing some other unlawful act. What we don't know is what precisely was the other unlawful act he was accused or convicted of performing. The jury was not required to answer that question. So we really don't know. And that's one of the major legal problems with this case, is that it was essentially hide and seek with what the actual criminal charge would be, because they could not convict him on the straight falsifying books and records because those are misdemeanors and it's too late to bring those charges. So they had to turn it into a felony by saying it was used for some other illegal purpose, but the judge did not require them to state what the other legal purpose was or to be unanimous in that.
And that's where the hush money comes in. But so they falsified the business records to pay hush money, but hush money is not illegal. It's just a non-disclosure agreement. So the twist is, I just want to make sure I get this right so we all listening can get this right and spread the word. So the crime here is that hush money payment benefited the campaign, so therefore was a campaign finance expenditure that was not properly disclosed. Is that the argument?
Well, we don't know. We don't know that it's unclear that all the judge required is that they unanimously find that it was done to advance some other unlawful purpose, but did not require the jury to find what that unlawful purpose was. The prosecution argued that it was essentially to interfere with the election, to violate federal and state election laws. But that has never been charged. So you have someone who's never been charged with violating election laws, with misdemeanor bookkeeping offenses, which couldn't be brought, but you combine the two and you have a novel legal theory that turns it into a felony. And that's the problem with this case from the get-go, is that they bent over backwards and they stretched the law to turn these misdemeanors into felonies without actually having a guilty finding that he committed these unlawful acts. So there's major problems from the get-go of this case.
But it worked. I've said, Donald Trump says it's a witch hunt. I'm like, yeah, of course. But sometimes they burn the witches. Right?
That's right.
And they got
so far it's been successful. Let's not forget, we have a district attorney. This is a local district attorney. Might sound like more because it's Manhattan, okay? It's just a local district attorney. It's your county district attorney who ran for office and said that he would be the one to get Donald Trump, because these claims regarding the payments to Stormy Daniels and things like that, they've been floating around for many years, for several years, and no DA was willing to actually bring the charges. He said, I will do it, and I will be the one to get Donald Trump. And so far he has been successful. I can't imagine this would hold up on appeal. The prosecution in this case had a very favorable trial court judge who made a lot of rulings in their favor. The appellate courts in New York are pretty good courts. I can't imagine that they're going to allow this to stand.
I want to ask about that process, actually. For now, though, I think the most important thing to know is that process would take place after an election, right? It takes quite a long time to go through that process. So it's important, but for political reasons, it's
right. And people need to understand that is not going to happen quickly. I don't know. They might hear it on an expedited schedule, but I'm not sure why they would. So that would be a many-month-long, perhaps longer, process in the state appeals courts. And at the end of it, you may have had an election which was interfered with by this prosecution, which doesn't hold up. And there is a precedent for this. People probably don't remember Alaska Republican Senator Ted Stevens was charged with crimes. He was found guilty. It turned out that the federal prosecutors in that case had obstructed justice and withheld evidence. But he was found guilty and he lost the election. And actually, his losing the election gave Democrats, through a series of other things, the votes they needed in the Senate to pass Obamacare. So, a Republican being convicted and having it overturned can be very hollow justice if it affects the election. I don't know how this is going to affect this election. A lot of people are saying there'll be a surge of support for Trump. That might be, but the election's still many, many months away. It's a little too hard to predict.
Yeah, passions are high right now, which is why I'm glad we went to you first, so that maybe my passions could be a tad bit lower when it's time to find.
I'll walk you down from the ledge.
Just a little bit. How would a normal businessman in New York City have been treated, or what would he have been charged? How would he have been charged for falsifying business records in New York? Just a normal guy.
Yeah, in this circumstance, it probably would not have been a charge if it wasn't Donald Trump. Remember, these are not really falsifying big business records for some fraudulent purpose. Okay, these were money payments for a non-disclosure agreement and essentially paying someone to keep quiet. That's not illegal. So they were not done for a directly illegal purpose. So it's highly unlikely this would have been charged in any event, and certainly not so long after the fact. And the only reason it was brought is because he's Donald Trump and he's running for president. And so he was not treated the way others would have been treated. Remember, this was a payment. The crime, alleged crime, was recording this as attorney's fees instead of some other sort of payment. And that, I don't think, would normally get prosecuted.
So could this have been avoided if Trump wrote in his business ledger hush money payment?
Well, that never, of course, happens. If he had written payment to Stormy Daniels, then we wouldn't be here today. Instead, he wrote payment for Michael Cohen legal fees. But that is what's so incredible here, and another fundamental defect legally in this case is that the claim is that the payments, which were not themselves illegal, interfered with the election, constituted election violations. But the underlying crime he's being charged with are books and records. They never made the case that it was the books and records entries that interfered with the election. They're saying it was the payments. So the thing that was illegal or allegedly illegal, the books and record entries, never affected anything. Nobody knew what was on those books and records. Nobody cared what was on those books and records. And yet that was parlayed into a felony for supposedly interfering in the election and violating election law. But that's just not what happened.
I think it was T. Beckett Adams. I hope I'm giving this right proper credit. He said something like, if you are going to charge the former president and the leading frontrunner with a felony, you better be dead to rights, and it better be just rock solid, something just obvious that not something as absurd as this. Let's talk about process, if you don't mind, Professor Jacobson. The sentencing. So July 11th, 4 days before the Republican convention. Who decides what the sentence will be and how?
The judge decides. So there'll be recommendations from I forget what it's called in this court, the probation department, or there'll be a report issued. Both sides will get to submit memos on what they believe the sentence should be. Of course, Trump will say nothing. I assume the prosecution is going to ask for jail time. And I believe that this judge will impose some jail time on Trump. A lot of people say, no, that's crazy. He's 77 years old, first-time offender, nonviolent offense. There's no way this would get jail time. I think this judge will impose something. It might be symbolic. It might be a weekend. I think this judge will impose something to humiliate Trump, or in his own mind, humiliate Trump, or to in some other way send a message that this was serious. So I think it might be a weekend, something like that. I don't think he's going to send him away for years. But I think this judge will do something. Every indication this judge has given so far is that he wants to send a message to Trump.